The room was small. A single bed against the wall, a desk with a laptop she didn't recognize the model of, a window facing east, showing a street that still had glass in every storefront. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She picked up the phone from the nightstand. She stared at the screen. The light from the phone made her face look thin and pale. She sat on the bathroom floor, the only room without black plastic over the windows, and read the message 6 times. He replied. She looked at him. He was maybe 22. Name tag read Danny. He had no idea that in 6 days, this supermarket would have a hole in its front window and a body in aisle 3.
Yeah, she said.
Moving. This was the part no one talked about. The waiting, knowing what was coming and being unable to speed it up or slow it down. Just existing in the gap between before and after. She worked in silence. No music. No podcast. She let the apartment grow darker as the plastic went up, one window at a time. By noon, the living room felt like a basement. At 1:15 p.m. she stopped, sat on the floor, ate half a can of cold beans directly from the tin, 1 roll of duct tape, 2 boxes of matches, a pocket knife from the kitchen drawer, a flashlight that still had batteries, a charger cable. Although she knew the grid wouldn't last past day 3, she looked at the bag and grabbed a second roll of duct tape. She walked home through streets that still had their quiet rhythm, a woman pushing a stroller, a man walking his dog, a car with music loud enough to vibrate the windows. They didn't know. The pharmacy was small, independently owned. The window had a sign that read closed in uneven marker letters, already curling at the edges. She stopped in front of it. She walked in like a normal person, took a cart, walked the aisles with the same pace as the woman buying cereal for her kids. She loaded bottled water, 12 liters, the limit of what she could carry, canned food, more matches, a first aid kit, a box of trash bags. She didn't run. Running attracted attention. Running meant questions. She moved like someone stocking up for a camping trip. 10 rolls of tape. The voice said. 2 months of canned food, first aid, and a hammer.
Where'd you get the hammer?
She sits in her dark apartment. Phone glowing. I believe you. First light outside, then a distant scream at 6:17 a.m. She was already standing by the window, fully dressed, bag packed since 4 a.m. She'd been watching the street turn from dark to gray, counting the cars that passed. 3 cars in 2 hours. That was already wrong. At 9 a.m., the power grid was still running. She made instant coffee on the electric stove, drank it standing by the window. The trash bags made the kitchen feel like evening at 9 in the morning. She looked at the bag of supplies by the door. Last time she'd left with nothing but her phone and a broken charger. She'd lasted 4 days. She picked up her phone. Then she put the phone face down and went back to inventorying her cans. An hour later, the phone buzzed. A man was walking down the middle of the street. Not fast. His shoulders were wrong, slumped forward, like his spine had lost the idea of standing straight. His left foot dragged with every step. She watched him pass under a streetlight. He was taller than she'd pictured. Messy brown hair. A scar on his jaw that she hadn't seen through the door gap. He carried a duffel bag that looked heavy enough to break a strap. He was holding a hammer in his right hand. They walked in silence for the first 10 minutes. Not the uncomfortable kind. The kind where both people were scanning their surroundings, cataloging threats, making sure they weren't being followed. Behind a bus stop, a figure staggered into view. The woman's head turned. Followed. Slowly. A full second of delay. See that lag? She can't track fast movement. Zigzag line. And she loses you. She turned off the phone's data. The network would go down by noon, the same pattern as last time. Too many people trying to call at once. The towers weren't built for this. Not the kind of dark where your eyes adjust. The kind of dark with no windows. No skylight. No gap under the door. The front was metal grating. The back was brick. The only light came from the rectangle of the delivery entrance they'd come through. And when Cole pulled the door shut behind them, even that disappeared. She stood still. Counted to 10. Let her hearing adjust. Cole moved without asking questions. His footsteps were careful, heavy enough to be purposeful, light enough not to echo. She heard him push a door open, pause, close it. Last time, at this hour, she'd been alone too. But she'd been running. No plan, no supplies, no one to watch her back. She'd hidden in a laundry room and listened to someone die in the hallway on the other side of the door. This time she was standing in a dry room with supplies and a hammer and a name. Cole was sitting on the floor with his back against the filing cabinet. His duffel was open beside him. He was eating a protein bar in small, measured bites. She sat down across from him, not close enough to share space, not far enough to signal distrust. She opened the atlas, flipped to the city map. I already answered that question. Not because she was scared, because she was watching the door. Across the room, Cole had his back to the wall, his hammer across his lap, his eyes closed. He was either asleep or faking it well enough to trust her. She didn't know which one made her more nervous. There's a supply point on the other side of the river. Last time it held for 3 weeks. If we get there before day 12, we might find medicine. Clean water. Working radios. You said last time you died on day 20? 1. Last time she'd hidden in a bookstore during the first night. Different city, different store. She'd turned on the overhead lights and a window had drawn every infected within 2 blocks. She'd spent the night in the bathroom, listening to them press against the glass. This time she kept the light low. She sat with her back against the bookstore counter, facing the metal grate. The street beyond was still. A newspaper had blown against the grate and stuck there, the front page half visible. City in lockdown. Cole came down the stairs. She heard him before she saw him. The creak of the 3rd step from the bottom, which she'd already catalogued. He placed the hammer on the floor between them. She looked at it, then at the street. She saw them through the gap in the grate. 7 of them, walking in the same direction, spaced unevenly, like a queue that had forgotten why it formed. Their footsteps were slow, unison in its wrongness. Cole stood at the gap, watching them pass. Look at the reflection in the bakery window, across the street. The 8th one is lying on the sidewalk. He looked, paused, let out a breath. She opened the atlas on the floor between them, traced a route from the bookstore to the bridge, marked 3 fallback points, a laundromat with a metal door, an underground parking garage with a single entrance, a fire station she remembered from last time. Cole watched her mark the map. Asked 1 question per point. Not, how do you know, just how long will it take, and what's the backup? Did you lose someone? Cole asked. She looked back at the map. Old woman, corner of 5th. She was alone. I boarded her windows before the news even broke. You knew before the news. A single infected stood at the end of the alley, facing away. Its head was tilted at an angle that pressed its ear to its own shoulder, like it was listening to something inside its skull. She put a hand out, stopped Cole. She remembered it from last time. A steel frame rising over the river, the roadbed lifted to let boats through. It had been stuck halfway up since the 2nd day. Someone had raised it to slow the spread and never lowered it again. The gap was 20 feet of open water. She found the access ladder. It was locked with a chain and padlock. She looked at it for a moment, then stepped aside. Backup hammer, 3 feet wide, metal grating, open to the river below. Handrail on one side only. On the other side, nothing but the rusted frame and the void. The wind was stronger at this height. It pushed through the grating, pulling at her jacket, trying to find a grip. She moved fast. Not running, walking with purpose, each foot placed deliberately on the grate. No hesitation. Behind her, Cole's footsteps were slower, steadier. She could hear him counting his own steps under his breath. An ER habit measure, assess, proceed. She turned, slowly. He was on one knee, his hand gripping the handrail. His face was pale, his jaw tight. You don't have to look up.
You don't have to look down.
You just have to move your feet. She stepped off the catwalk and onto solid ground. For a moment she just stood there, feeling the stillness of something that didn't sway. Cole stepped down a few seconds later. His face was still pale, but he was standing. The industrial yard was empty. The buildings were silent. A forklift sat abandoned in the middle of a loading bay, its forks still raised, a pallet of boxes rotting in the open air. She led them through the gaps between buildings, staying under awnings, keeping metal and concrete between herself and open sightlines. The pharmacy was 1 block ahead. She could see its sign from here, a green cross, half lit by the afternoon sun, flickering on and off. Plan? Cole asked. Shelves of inventory, boxes unopened, a clipboard hanging from a hook with last week's delivery sheet still attached. The air was stale but not rotten. The pharmacy had been sealed before the outbreak spread this far. She stood in the doorway, let her eyes adjust. The stockroom connected to the main floor through a curtain of plastic strips. She pushed through slowly. The main floor was darker, no windows, only the green glow of the exit sign and the flickering cross in the front window. The shelves stood in rows, pain relievers, cold medicine, bandages. Everything a person would need to survive a fever, a cut, a bad day. Inside, 2 rows of prescription drugs, antibiotics, painkillers, something for blood pressure, a small bottle of insulin. She picked up the antibiotics, looked at the label, set them aside. She moved toward the sound. Slow, knife in her hand. The shelves blocked her view of the counter, and she didn't want to round the corner blind. She stopped at the edge of the last row. The infected was a man. Middle-aged.
White coat.
A pharmacist. He'd been at work when it happened. His name tag still read Martin. He was dragging himself across the floor, one leg twisted under him, his head lolling at an angle that meant his neck was broken. He was slow, but he was coming toward her. She turned away from Martin, walked back to the counter, resumed packing. Behind her, Martin dragged himself toward the shelf, hit it, and kept pushing against it, his body pressing into the metal frame. Last time I died from an infection. On this street? In front of this pharmacy. He didn't say anything. Behind them, the closed sign still hung in the window, curling at the edges. She didn't look back at it. They walk 3 blocks. She tells him about the water treatment plant. 17 days. He asks no more questions. They keep moving. The building was gray concrete. 2 stories. A chain link fence around the perimeter with razor wire along the top. A sign near the entrance read City Water Authority, authorized personnel only. Someone had driven a truck through the fence. She scanned the perimeter. The fence was down in 3 places. The main door was ajar. A dark stain spread from the bottom of the door. Oil. Or blood. She couldn't tell from this distance. This time we're here. I don't know what's inside, but I know one thing. There will be people. The infected don't drive trucks through fences. The main control room had a bank of monitors showing pressure levels and flow rates, a desk with a half-eaten sandwich, and a cold cup of coffee, a coat hanging on the back of a chair. Someone had left it there, expecting to come back. Doris walked through the control room like she owned it. The lights were off. The only illumination came from the emergency exit signs and the red glow of the control panel in the booth. The booth was glass-walled. A man sat inside, his back to the wall, a crowbar across his lap. He looked up when the door at the top of the stairs opened. Water's still running. Pumps are automated. The tanks have enough reserve for another 5, maybe 6 days if no one shuts anything off. And the people who control it? Cole looked at it in the light of the control room. Clean wound.
Not infected.
Not yet. Disinfect it now. Wrap it tight. If the wound turns dark within 24 hours, we amputate. A shape in the dark, crouched behind a pipe. It wasn't moving. It was waiting the way infected waited when they'd lost their target but hadn't lost their hunger. Cole. Stay at the top of the stairs. If I tap the railing twice, make noise. Past the pipe, behind the shape. To the door of the control booth. She pulled it open. In. Now. They approached slowly. The woman didn't move until they were 20 feet away. Then she turned her head. She looked at them. No fear. No surprise. Raina was awake when it happened. She'd been sitting in the control room chair, facing the door, not sleeping. Cole was on the floor against the wall, his hammer across his knees. Doris was checking the stockroom for anything useful. Doris had come back from the stockroom. She stood in the doorway, a box of crackers in her hands. She didn't put them down. "You're going to amputate his arm," she said. "Here," with a hammer and a pocket knife. Doris looked at Raina, then back at Cole. Then she put the crackers down. "What do you need?" Last time, she'd been the one on the floor. She'd watched her own wound turn dark. She'd known what it meant, and she'd crawled anyway, crawled toward a pharmacy where no one opened the door. Cole passed her on his way to the supply closet. He stopped. "You learn the steps during training. You practice on cadavers. Then one day a real one comes in and you do it the same way, because the steps don't change." He looked at her. Doris had stayed beside him the whole night. She'd changed the dressing twice, sponged his forehead, talked to him in a low voice, even when he was too unconscious to hear. She was sitting on the floor beside him when Raina came down with her bag. Doris was standing in the doorway of the control room, one hand on the frame, the other resting on Paul's stretcher. Raina raised her hand, not a wave. Acknowledgement. She looked at Doris, the blue apron, the gray hair coming loose from its bun, the lines on her face that 12 years of early mornings had carved there. Last time, a woman in a blue apron had handed her a bottle of water in a line outside this building. She'd taken it, and then she'd kept walking. The sign by the road read Pine Ridge Motel, vacancy in faded letters. The parking lot was empty except for a sedan with its doors open and its windows smashed. The lobby door was unlocked. Raina checked the room before Cole finished crossing the parking lot. Room 7 was intact. Door closed. Bed made, a Bible on the nightstand, a coffee mug on the dresser, with a ring of old coffee at the bottom. She opened the bathroom, checked the shower curtain, checked the window lock. Then his weight settling into the chair near the window, where he could see the parking lot and the door at the same time. She opened one eye. "I'm trying to find an alternate route. If the bridge is out, we need another crossing. There's a railroad bridge, 8 miles east. Walkable. The infected don't climb well." That staying alive doesn't mean staying human. He didn't answer immediately. He picked up the hammer, ran his thumb along the claw end. "Then we'll figure it out together. Like the bridge. Like the pharmacy. Like everything else." She took the can. The room was dark now, curtains drawn, no lights on. They sat on opposite sides of the bed, the can between them. "Tell me something I don't know," she said. For the first time in 13 days, she didn't reach for her knife when the silence settled. The street was quiet. A burned out car sat in the middle of the intersection, its frame still radiating heat. The windows of the buildings on either side were dark. No movement. No sound except the wind pushing a loose shutter back and forth. Cole stopped beside her. Last time, she'd died on the street 1 block from here. Not at the pharmacy itself. She'd crawled to the pharmacy from a loading dock 3 blocks east, leaving a trail of blood. She'd been alive when she reached the door, alive when she knocked, alive when she waited. The blood trail had stopped at the door. The pharmacy door was closed. The closed sign was still in the window. The handprint she'd left last time was gone. Rain, or wind, or time had washed it away. She didn't leave a new one. Last time she'd crawled over this crack, left a smear. This time she stepped over it. The pharmacy was exactly as they'd left it. The drawer she'd opened was still open. The shelves were still half cleared. The shadow of the corridor to the back room was still dark. She walked to the counter, ran her finger across the surface. Dust. Cole was where she'd left him, standing on the sidewalk, facing the street, watching. He hadn't come in, hadn't asked, hadn't moved. She closed the door behind her. The bell jingled again. The radio tower was visible from half a mile away, a steel structure rising above the tree line, its red warning light still blinking in the dusk. Raina stopped at the edge of the woods, studied it through the gap in the trees.
"I chose to wait."
"I was in a group. We found a building with smoke coming from the chimney. We waited to see who was inside." She paused. "By the time we decided to approach, the people inside had already seen us. They shot first. I was the only one who ran." Cole was quiet. A man stood in the doorway, Mid-30s, a shotgun in his hands, pointed at the floor. He looked at her, then at Cole, then back at her. You got about 10 seconds to tell me why you're at my door. A single room. A table, a chair, a bedroll in the corner, a radio unit on the table, its casing cracked, wires hanging from the side. The man's name was Kel? He'd been a communications technician before the outbreak. He'd been in the tower for 10 days, fixing the radio, trying to raise someone on any frequency. Nothing but static. The towers north of here are down. The ones south are jammed. Jammed by who? If we go east, we do it together. You don't leave me behind to cover your retreat. You don't make the choice for both of us. She looked at his hand on her arm. There's a smaller tower, 10 miles east, off the grid. No one knows about it. The line might still be live. You said the northern towers are down. Behind them, the tower's red light blinked against the dark sky. Patient, waiting. She didn't look back. 10 miles east, a concrete structure half hidden by overgrowth. No lights, no smoke, no sign that anyone had been there since the world ended. Raina approached first, tested the door. Locked. The door swung open onto a narrow staircase leading up. She climbed first. The stairs creaked, but held. At the top, a door marked Radio Room. Authorized personnel only. She pushed it open. The equipment was old but intact. A transmitter, a receiver, a generator in the corner. Still smelling faintly of fuel. She walked to the transmitter, ran her hand along its surface.
I'll leave a light on.
Transmit every hour on this frequency.
We'll guide you in.
She released the button.
Sat back.
Behind them, the transmitter hummed in the silence, waiting for the next voice to call. Above them, the sky was clear. That's 3 more than last time. She looked at him. But I figure we'll figure it out. The same way we figured out the bridge. The pharmacy. The tower.
By walking toward it?
Now there was a door that was open, with someone on the other side saying, I'll leave a light on. She didn't know what came after survival.